Howdy, howdy, howdy. My name's Anashi Sasuke, and this is something that's going to be a little weird for me. Um, for a while now, my dad has been heavily suggesting that on my YouTube channel, I cover some stuff I've made myself. I do Let's Reads all the time, and I do games when I remember to play them. But I had also wanted to work on making games, and I went to college to be a writer. And then because of how college went, I lost faith in my ability to write for 8 years. But I've been starting to get back into it through D&D, or Dungeons and Dragons. That's why right now the placeholder image is my persona as a bard, because I wanted to use that in D&D at one point, but at the time the GM said no to backseat, so that didn't happen. That's beside the point. I decided to, for this video, read a few things that I've written for Dungeons and Dragons. One that was written as I was taking my initial character out of the campaign. A couple of things that were written for the character that will be going into the campaign tomorrow afternoon. And one for the character who I brought over from a completely different campaign, from a completely different playstyle that I thought I was going to be using. And then I decided to let my party vote on it, and they chose the ranger instead of the artificer, as I was calling. So anyway, the first thing is going to be the document that was written when I was thinking of having the character leave and why. And to give some setup, my character, there were only 2 people in the party of 6 besides him that he considered to be his friends. And by this point, he had witnessed both of them die and couldn't do anything about it. And he felt shitty. He also is missing chunks of his memory, but he wasn't in the campaign long enough to learn that. So his name was Chase Fimblerod, and he was a warlock. So it took a while before Chase's ears stopped ringing from the spells he flung at the corpse. Also, whenever he gets angry, he just shoots Eldritch Blast at the corpse until it explodes. He lost track of how many after 7. He had to stop when his wand started burning in his hand. Why? He thought, slamming his fist against the wall. Spade and then Ellie, and I couldn't do shit! What good is being a spellcaster if all I can do is hurt things? He grabbed one of the pillows he'd stolen from... Where did it matter where he got it? Now it was his and he was screaming into it. What's your problem, human? Well, you don't know, Shogath. You gave me the magic, and there's really nothing I can do with it to help people. You can help people by destroying the danger before it reaches them. I don't understand why you're so upset. You stupid mortals wouldn't have survived this long if you weren't resourceful. Your allies all live. Yeah, well, now Ellie's a completely different race, and Ithark is missing a fucking hand. Can't exactly pour a potion on it and stick it back, can I? Just realized I spelled pour wrong. The parrot seems to be just fine. Chase paused. He wanted to call his patron on being racist, but wanted a box of Eldritch care about race relations. Spaded. Chase threw the pillow down, not in the mood to scream anymore. Speaking more to himself than Shogath, he sighed. So, Spade can talk other than the magic feathers and the little book. Would I know that if I hadn't gotten Ellie killed? Shogath made a sound somewhere between a scoff and a cackle. I hardly see how it's your fault the gnome was destroyed by the... What was it your group called them? Salads? Chase ripped the box off of his hip, ripping his belt in the process, and held it level with his face. If I hadn't stopped the damn thing from leaving, she would have been fine. I tried to get it away from her, but she came back and then and I didn't even get to finish the fucker. Yes, that was a nice job the parrot did. A fowl after my own heart. Will you stop calling him a parrot? His fist clenched around the box as he motioned to throw it, then let it drop to his feet. Watch how you handle my prison, human. You cannot fathom the depths of my cruelty should you... What cruelty? You're trapped in that box. Yeah, you can mess with people who stare at it, but all I have to do is chuck it in a lake or off of a cliff. You said you can't get out. Take the magic back. It's not helping me save the people I care about. It isn't that simple. A pact is a pact, no matter where the patron ends up. We are bound. He looked down at the box. What pact? We never made a pact. I offered to release you and you said it was impossible, but you gave me magic for trying. Such is the pact. What? He frowned. What do you get out of this if I can't free you? There was a moment of silence before the voice resumed in his head. Have you spoken to your new dwarf friend since her return? There were several noises of frustration as he swiped the box from the ground and clipped it to a different part of his belt. You know I haven't. You've been with me the whole time. I don't really know how to talk to the group right now. I got one of their friends killed. I lost my temper and blew up another corpse. Their friend? I thought she was your friend. No. Yes. I don't know. Spade and Ellie and Deimos have been friendly towards me this whole time. You would think after a year I'd feel more comfortable with everyone, but I'm not. I'll do what I can to help them to the best of my stupid, dangerous ability, but... You say that a lot. What? It's a useful word for uncertainty. Saying would make me sound stupid. That's not the point. I don't know if Spade or Ellie really considered me a friend back. Realistically, they don't even blame me for what happened. Millie's face, though. Maybe I should leave. And where would you go? Do you know how to chart a ship home without the other mortals? I guess I could try to fly until I found a ship and then pay my way on? Then I could go back to my job in Anar and... Silence from the box. I've barely had a chance to do any research here. If I do go back to Anar, I'll just get fired and have to find a new job. You would think it would be easy to get a job as an archaeologist with all these lost races and the like. Why would I think that? Come on now, an Elder's Bane can't really not know a figure of speech. My interactions with humans were not eloquent conversations, fool. Does this have anything to do with why you're in the... It has everything to do with why I'm in the box! And when I escape, I will track down those who imprisoned me and repay them 10,000-fold! Right, well... If I'm leaving, all I have is what's on my back. They can keep the grapes and the potatoes. I didn't really need it. I just wanted to help the economy. Should I tell them, or should I just go? Again, the box was silent, although it felt warm against his leg. Maybe getting so worked up was a bit much for it. He pulled on his things, tested the weight. I should just go. If people die helping me, it means I'm a liability. I was trying to save Deimos, but Macon did better at that than me. Chase sat back down to discuss this with himself rather than his patron, who couldn't care less about his situation. In his mind's eye sat Chase. Across from him, in a chair, sat Chase, only this one seemed haggard. Long, scraggly hair covering his face, a beard visible. This Chase glanced up. What is it this time? I'm trying to decide if I should leave my group because I feel like I got Ellie killed. You feel like you got Ellie killed. The other Chase said this at the same time as the first finished speaking, and how is that? Because you stopped the Slad getting away? Yeah, if I had just let it leave, it would have come back and destroyed the rest of her town while you were traveling. The other Chase got out of his chair, strode across the void, and slapped the first one out of his chair. The first Chase got off the ground. What the hell was that about? The other slapped him again, back to the ground. That was because you're being a damn fool! You've been drafted to help save the damn world! You got framed for mass murder! You sassed Tiamat! Punch. It doesn't matter if Millie or Ellie or Spade blame you for what happened. Ellie ran back in there herself. She chose that fight. At this, the older Chase grabbed the first by his collar and hefted him up to eye level. If you leave this group now, if they even let you, you'll just end up looking like me right before the world ends. I'm sure we got better things to be doing than letting the world end, don't you? Chase coughed up some blood, and the other Chase dropped him roughly back into his chair before returning to his own. The way I see it, the box is right. He's a crazy bastard, but he's right. Warlock magic isn't for healing, but it can help people. You went to college, learned how to study a skeleton right up close, real good at investigations, and you hang on to that. But if you want to feel useful, if you don't want any more friends dying on you, it's time to start making some fucking skeletons. I don't mean that literally. Hell, maybe I do. Chase repositioned himself in his chair, cleaning up the blood as he listened to this. You set this up for my input. The scrawny, well-read kid that's been living in Anar has to stay in here for a while. Let's say we swap seats for a while so I can make sure Spade and Ellie stay alive for us. For all of us. More coughing as Chase stood from his chair and walked over. I don't think I want to let you take over. Our body probably can't take it, but maybe we can do more together than these meetings. I spent so long trying to avoid fights, it shows in the magic I got, but now I need to get in there. You're right about that, but if Millie or Ellie blame me, I... The other chase grabbed his face with both hands. No, none of that. People die. We can't save every individual from the Reaper. Apparently neither can clerics, but you gotta do what you can. And what you can do is stay here. Be here for them if they'll let you. Now get out of here. You're probably staring into space right now. Bad for the eyes. Human, you've been staring at the parrot's chicken for 10 minutes. What's wrong with you? Nothing. Hopefully nothing. I wrote that with the intent, halfway through that, I was actually thinking of leaving the party, and the other half was talking myself out of it. And then the following session went the way it did, which reinforced me wanting to leave the party, and then the next week I did. So tomorrow I start the new character, but first the thing before that. For some background on this character, they came from a game called Eclipse Phase, where everything was super fucked up in Eclipse Phase. If you wanted to have psychic powers, you had to also have a mental disability. You had to be crazy to actually have psychic powers. So I gave him a really dark backstory to account for it, but decided to not give him a super dark backstory in this world. What this document originally started as was supposed to be just me setting them up for being in this world, and then it got really meta, and then it got really meta, but I had fun writing it, and it's got a different tone than the last one. I tried to have them all have different tones from each other. I myself, my vocal cords only got so many voices they can do though, so. Fidget, look! I'm almost done with this little handheld cannon. I know it doesn't have a personality, but do you think we should name it something? Tom. Also, Fidget is based off of Fidget from Dust. What's up, Fidget? Don't you like the tiny cannon? It's a nice tiny cannon, yeah, but Tom! Yeah, it's really cool that I was even able to find the materials out here in the wilderness for it, with all the weird monsters in this area. I'm also surprised I was even able to build the treehouse, but it's been something of a peaceful few years, hasn't it, Fidget? Thomas, why are we here? What do you mean? You know what I mean. Tom, please. I've put up with this weirdness for 5 years, and it's been hard enough not being an AI anymore. It's just plain weird, and your plan for trying to turn me real is bizarre at best, but why are we in this world? Fidget, after damn near everyone decided to become gods and Baymax left to go back to his life, I didn't really have anything left. I got my revenge, but it didn't bring my parents back, and I knew it wouldn't. I was still stuck with Carl and Tina. All the friends I had made were basically gone, but then I was offered a chance to get out of that horrible place, start in a new world with new rules. And that isn't weird to you? That some weird disembodied voice decided to just plop us into a new reality to be happier. Easy, Fidget, don't lean too hard on that wall. This is so weird. I spent all that time at your personal computer, and now I'm just this thing that you insist you can make real. I'm already based on a video game. How much deeper does this have to go? Okay, you have a point, and this world isn't even all that much happier. I didn't get experimented on. There's no Carl and no Tina, but my parents are still dead here. Only now I've been framed for it, and there's assassins after me, which didn't really get explained. That's just a thing that's happening here. Now, who's leaning on the wall, Tom? Yeah, well, it is weird. I'm not sure why I'm part elf here. The voice said it would just make things easier and to not think about it too hard. The voice said don't metagame, Tom. Which is a weird thing for something posing as a god to tell somebody before they get reality bounced. But as far as I can tell, nothing else from that godforsaken place came with us. Not even my dad's knife. I have a bunch of stuff and magic that emulates some of what I lost, and also fireballs now for some reason. Maybe it's for the kneecap grenades. The catapults for the kneecap grenades, and I can't be going around talking about that here. I don't think this world has androids. Not this edition anyway. Fidget, the wall, please. Right, sorry, yeesh. What's that? Why is that thing glass anyway? More of a weird plastic, but I think you remember enough from being a computer to know what the deal is with that particular wall is. Oh, that wall. Why are we able to see it here? Because this is just a dramatic conversation our god isn't taking too seriously instead of what we're usually doing. And how long before we end up stabbing a hole in this weird plastic wall? Honestly, it depends on if I show this to anybody else. You know what? Fair. Is that fair, Fidget? Not really. It's kind of weird. Why are you just writing weird, useless information about our lives? Because I missed you guys, but didn't really want to pretend none of the last adventure happened for the sake of this one. Oh, that's kind of sweet, in an uncomfortable, omnipresent being with too much power sort of way. Rude. At least I haven't actually decided to bring Carl back, but I was thinking of calling the Tiny Cannon Tina, she was the good one. Interesting weird extra voice in our heads. Should I call it Tiny Tina? Maybe. The reference might make the group laugh, and I'm not exactly trying to publish this, so no danger of getting sued. Why would that get you sued? Why would that get you sued? Fidget, you were also somebody else's intellectual property that I'm just extremely attached to. What the heck does that mean? Fidget, you literally called out being a video game character. I mean, granted, I made her say that, but you're right. Dude, what is it that's happening here? Not just you directly talking to us, which is a weird narrative decision. What is it I'm meant to be doing in this place? Am I really here to have a happier existence? Sort of. You'll be working with the guy behind Baymax just as a different person. That sounds nice, I think. Bizarre, but a nice thought. Yeah, there's also going to be more people of various races and classes, or jobs, depending on how you want to look at that. Is this video game speak again? A bit. Some video games are based on this. You're going to be helping them try to save the world, and in return, they might help you turn Fidget into a real creature. Hey, why do you want Tom to do that anyway? Well, I'd be lying if I said it had nothing to do with my attachment to you, but the guy running all of this wants me to have a backstory he can work with, and I wanted to give you something better than a revenge story. So, you did that to me last time. Why? Why did you kill my family with my hands? For some stupid reason, that world requires tragic backstories in order to have cool psychic powers, and I didn't know how messed up that place was going to be when I came up with you. Came up with? Come on, you gotta know you're not real. I'm literally just talking to myself in 3 directions. Not even gonna question that. How about you, Fidget? Nope. Cool. Anyway, I figured if I wanted you two to have a happier story, but still something interesting for the group, it would have to be to have you try and take Fidget from being a homunculus to a real Nimbat. You might not be a Nimbat because this world doesn't have those, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So, weird voice, call me Wenny. Why? Because it feels weird to write out my real name. It's a whole thing, don't worry about it. Okay, so Wenny, what exactly is it we're meant to be doing? I gotta say, like, not the reading, but out for real. Writing it like this, it was easier to tell who was talking when I was writing it than it is to be reading it back a few weeks later. But, honestly, I don't know yet. All I had so far for it was you and Fidget being the best of friends while you were in exile for 5 years. At some point, you may have to temporarily lose access to her, and I've designed you to have a panic attack when that happens. What? Why? For the drama. This game has less drama than everyone would like, so I decided to try and inject some. How dramatic can it be if you have it planned so far ahead, though? Good question, Fidget, who was really just me asking myself that. Please don't do that, it feels gross. Sorry. Anyway, it's all just a pile of stuff that I would like to have happen, but I have absolutely no control over. If it happens, I hope I can play it well enough to make people feel something, but I'm not an actor, so whatever. So what happens now? I don't really know. I have another character called Chase Fimblerod who's going through some shit. He doesn't even actually know about any of it yet. That's just how bad it is. Yikes. Are you this harsh to all your characters? Not on purpose, but it seems to end up being dark backstory comic relief no matter what I intend doing. Just my personality, I guess. So, how does this Fimblerod guy have anything to... Okay, I guess it's Fidget then. So how does this Fimblerod guy have anything to do with me and Tom? Well, you guys just sort of stay in this treehouse in my brain and I guess on my computer now, until he either succeeds in his mission or dies. Dude, what is this world? I think it's called the Forgotten Realms, but I just call it D&D. You can't be serious. Were your Dungeons and Dragons characters? Well, before you were my Eclipse Space characters. What the fuck is that? It's basically Dungeons and Dragons in space if everybody had a life as hard as, somewhere between tieflings and goblins. There's not cortical stacks here, but people get to roll dice to keep their characters alive. Yeah, we know how D&D works, dingus! Why are you bringing us into this? Like I said, I missed you guys and wanted to see if it was feasible to use you again here. I do have a Tiefling Ranger set aside if I let both of you rest here instead. What's her deal, Wenny? Well, basically she hunts monsters to keep her own anger in check and doesn't want to fall to her bad impulses. That sounds a bit personal there, guy. Hey, no, we're not doing that. Either way, if I don't drag you guys into this world that is weirdly hostile to animals, I'll be bringing her in. Rather than explain that, I'll just decide you know that now. That is a very weird way to gain knowledge, but now that we have it, what the hell is wrong with you, Wenny? It seemed like a good idea at the time for a character motivation, and I stand by that. It'll probably end up in unintentional comic relief anyway, since I don't want to annoy people by being too serious. That did end up causing some harsh mood whiplash when you got your revenge a few years ago. How so? Nobody in the room was expecting you to carve open the dude's chest and electrocute his heart, but man, is it fun to tell that story. Seriously, what the fuck is wrong with you? Couldn't tell you, Tom. I really couldn't. But anyway, that about does it for this bout of weirdness. I need sleep. Y'all probably do too. Back to your tinkering with Tina the Tiny Cannon. I've been tweaking your abilities to try and make sure you're all squared away, so if I bring you out into this chaos, you should be prepared. Thanks, I guess. Good night, Winnie! Thanks, Fidget. You guys stay safe in my memories until I need you. I think we can do that for you? Until then, Winnie. Yeah, until then, Colligan. Okay, so that's that one. I'll probably close out of these when I'm done reading them. But before I do that, let's bounce back over here. So, as you can probably see, I just wrote... I typically write these with mild reckless abandon because I'm never really intending on anyone seeing them, but then as soon as they're done, I want input because it's like, I couldn't write for 8 years, even though I went to college for that. I need to know if it sucks or not. Please. Please. And I've got like 2 or 3 people who have read them and they say that it's great, and it's like, are they lying to me and my writing is terrible? But that would mean everyone who's ever read my writing ever has always been lying about it since I was like 15, and I feel like it doesn't work like that. But I also don't want to get a big head about it, like, oh boy, my writing's great, I could do anything, because that's also bad. Weirdness about my upbringing has made having ego difficult. Not ego, the other one. I guess ego, whatever. Either way, the next thing is the third character, who is a tiefling. For all intents and purposes, she's a tiefling named Balance. We'll get to that. I was intending on writing her backstory. I have so far failed to write her backstory twice. I wrote some stuff to try to get the hang of using her, but I have so far completely failed to write her backstory twice. How long do I have? I got about an hour and a half to finish this. Okay. She jolted awake, then groaned and rolled over, rubbing her eyes. It would be so much easier if the nightmares came from her line of work instead of what pushed her into it. Balance threw her legs out off the bed and slouched forward, wiping her forehead instinctively, even though there was no sweat. Monster slayer that she was, she didn't have the magic to directly fight her memories. She could only suppress them, at least until she slept. In these instances, it was all Balance could do to not actually scream out in her thrashing. She'd been thrown out of inns for that before. No, she'd been thrown out for what she was. The shouts were just their excuses to feel better about themselves. Tieflings didn't really have the easiest lives in the best of times. Growing up as a relentless flirt, well, what sort of times those were depended on the success of the flirting. She chuckled and sneered as she grabbed a mug of water off the counter and checked it for poison. Even when you filled your drinks yourself, it was better safe than sorry around these parts. Warlocks, vampires, racists, spurned bards. Better safe than sorry. If anybody watches this who plays D&D and like, why would you say the thing about people being racist towards tieflings? My dungeon master does have that in his D&D world, so I decided to play off of it. Anyway, Balance knocked back the drink and stood up. She was fully dressed as per usual when preparing for a hunt. Her weapons were on the counter by the water, so she strapped them on and looked out the window. Still night. Perfect. After making her bed, politeness to the innkeeper made it easier to not get thrown out. She headed out into the night, not bothering to say if she'd be back, because who knows? You could be the best slayer in the world, but that doesn't save you when it's time to go. The job is to hunt something that eats cattle, set fires, and plays practical jokes on teenagers. Weird that the ad mentions that last bit, but the town needs their cattle and not fires. But I'm not the only one who took this, and what's left of their fighters guild is also on the hunt. The commander isn't fond of a tiefling he can't control hunting monsters in his town, and I'm not fond of the amount of people they think they need to find one creature, but hey, Sarah, Sarah. As she went over that morning's disagreements in her head, Balance felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up and froze, looking down to find tracks in the dirt. She knelt and put her finger to them. Fresh, looks like someone was being dragged. She followed the line in the dirt until she reached the fence of the nearest farm. Here there seemed to be a struggle that broke the gate before the shape of whoever was being dragged shifted from the heels of shoes to a bloody torso. She scraped up some of the blood on her dagger and sniffed it. Not human. Maybe... She turned around with her whip drawn and found a dwarven man. He held up his hands to show he was unarmed. Easy there, miss. I'm just tracking the beast to get me wife back. He waited until Balance put away her whip to lower his hands. Seems she put up quite the fight, dwarf, but she's been bled, so the clock is ticking. Where's the damnable Fighters Guild? She didn't let the annoyance show on her face, but for all their bravado, she would have thought they'd at least be where the monster is. The dwarf sighed heavily. They're in town. They're fighting the foolish bastard of an orc who's been stealing cattle and starting fires. And bothering teenagers? Aye, and the daft... Never mind that. The thing that took my wife is something else entirely. Or hadn't you noticed it left no tracks of its own? He jerked his thumb back to the trail. I was more focused on the tracks of the person in danger, but he's right, I was careless. Did you see the creature? Have you any idea why it took your wife, dwarf? My name is, he started, but she raised a hand. We're not likely to meet again after this. No names, if you please. Yeah, right. Also, I'm going to be bouncing around badly with the accent, because I know what kind of accent I wanted him to have, but that doesn't mean I can do it. The creature is likely out to finish the job. Seems that my family is under some curse on her side. Turn of the decade, give or take, this creature starts stalking a household until it gets someone. I've already lost my brother and my baby girl. I can't lose me wife as well. A strange vocal quirk that. Never mind that. But have you seen the beast? The dwarf nodded. Aye. I caught sight of it as it bounded out of my kitchen, wife by the neck. Seemed to be some sort of great frog or some such nonsense. Vanderhob. Do you know whether this was the same beast that fell your brother and your child? His head sank. I couldn't rightly say, but mayhaps I... Do you think you could stop it and save my wife? Balance briefly broke eye contact with the dwarf. Never liked giving bad news, but everyone deserved the truth of their misfortune. I think your wife is already dead. I've come across these beasts before, and if it comes to slay someone, usually it does, but I believe I can stop it from ever harming your family again. The dwarf dropped to his knees and wailed, No! I can't lose me wife. Our boy's just about ready to start his education. He'll need a mom for that, not just a father. Bounce reached out a hand, faltered, and let it drop. I will slay this beast, she said, clenching her jaw, and find the one who has set it upon you. She left the dwarf to his grief and turned to head into the fields. She could track the Vanderhob easily enough through the broken corn stalks, but once the blood trail led into a dark barn, I was supposed to say swore, not sword. She soared under her breath, and infernal. The beast and I both aren't hindered by the dark much, but it will certainly slow me down with my sword. She took out her dagger in her left hand, her whip in the right, and headed into the barn. She stepped gingerly, aiming to avoid sticks or stray bits of hay while listening intently, hoping the creature failed to do the same. Suddenly, a flash in the corner of her eye earned that beast a narrow miss of her thrown dagger for its trouble. It stumbled a bit and hissed at her. What do you want from me, demon kin? It croaked before flashing its tongue out. Balance rolled out of the way and cracked her whip towards its origin. It groaned and fled back behind the hay bales. I am here to end your pathetic existence, but not before I make you tell me who sent you. She cracked the whip again, swiftly destroying the bale the Vanderhob was hiding behind. What do you care? You don't mean anything to these people, and they can't wait for us both to be gone. Just let me go, monster to Ah! The Vanderhob stopped short as her whip caught it in the mouth, silencing its attempted monologue. We may both be monsters to these people, but that means not for the end you will meet tonight among the corpses of horses and housewives. She took a few steps towards the Vanderhob before it spit blood and fled again, hopping up to the rafters. So you think yourself a paladin, demonkin? A savior of the downtrodden, the foolish? Bah! Let me on my way, maybe I'll even leave you the corpse to be blamed for. At this, another flash of the tongue caught balance on the thigh, and she dropped to her knee, grimacing. This beast will not hear my scream. She aimed her hand to the roof and blasted it to pieces with a blast of wind, smirking as she heard the Bannerhob wail in fear before landing somewhere in the fields. Getting back to her feet, she headed out to find the hopefully broken body. A shuffling could be heard as she returned to the corn, listening as it tried to flee. Now, demonkin, I didn't know you were a follower of a wind god. Maybe paladins aren't so bad. I'm no paladin, fool, and no god walks with me. I am a monster slayer, and you are but a meal's worth of gold to me. She whipped out her sword and plunged it backwards into the pouncing Banderhob, its teeth ready for a taste of futility. It coughed as it dropped to the ground, spitting up blood. Of its own, or the dwarven woman, Balance couldn't tell. You've precious little time before you perish. Who sent you to imperil this family? You will die regardless. Best tell me so I can make your creators suffer for wasting your meager existence. The Banderhob coughed again and gestured her closer. It whispered to her and breathed its last. At dawn, Balance strode out to the center of town and tossed the body at the door of the Fighters Guild. Out with you! Your Banderhob is slain and has given you up. I'll wait a minute more of politeness to the guild, but if they value their doors, they'll... At this, the double front door swung open sloppily as a bloody dwarf stumbled out. Back down, woman, you can't prove nothing. I just helped save the town from the tyranny of an orc not 10 hours ago. What have you done with your time, eh? Bounce caught herself before smirking. Me? Oh, I've just caught your Banderhob after it murdered and ate the woman you love. All the color that wasn't orc blood drank from the dwarf's face. Yeah. What? She's dead? That blasted useless tub of slime and entrails! It was supposed to kill him! Him! He stamped his foot a few times, a sob welling up, before he realized what he had just done. That is damn. Behind him, more members of the Fighters Guild walked out, the commander putting a hand on his shoulders, appearing comforting, but the people gathering in the square knew better. Maybe you should explain yourself. This many witnesses to your story might earn you less time in a cell. Other guild members nodded and mumbled until the door from the previous night pushed past Balance and hurled an axe at the one standing at the guild. There were gasps as it flew, but before it connected, Balance was standing in front of the target and caught it by the blade, wincing as it partially severed her thumb. This is not how we will do this, dwarf, she stated, dropping the axe to the ground. The hell we ain't! He exclaimed back. I know this sorry bastard! He and my wife were sweet on each other decades back. You were the best man at our wedding because she still loved you, and you repay her by taking her life? The other dwarf roared in fury. I was after your life, ye stupid git! Till death do we part in it! Well, what death is more certain than eaten by a Banderhob? Why her? Why did it go after her? At this, Balance rolled around and cracked him across the jaw with a backhand that made the crowd flinch, angry widower included. You fool. Did you really think yourself adept enough at spellcraft that the Bannerhob would accept your full instructions? It isn't the Mage's Guild you're standing in front of, is it? You are a fighting dwarf, meddling in forces you could not understand over emotions you clearly don't. You have cost this man his wife, one of his children, and a brother. I have just saved you from vigilante justice. Do not make me finish the attempt. Two members of the Fighters Guild stepped forward. That's quite enough, tiefling. We can't have you threatening to kill members of our town, even if they are murderous fools. The commander lifted his hand from the dwarf and reached for Balance, but took a step back when she went to her whip. I think you'd best leave this town, tiefling. We just finished the job you were here for. You saved 2 lives but destroyed public property. Be lucky that I'm asking instead of putting you in a cell too. She leaned closer until their eyes were a foot apart. The gates of hell wouldn't take me, Commander. Your cell would do naught but melt on my exit. At this she turned on her heel so suddenly all of the guildsmen flinched back and approached the dwarf, kneeling to him out of respect. I'm sorry I was unable to save your wife, dwarf. But I did not think it best for your son that you become a killer this morning. He sighed heavily, clenching and unclenching his fists. You're right, Ranger. Damn you to the 9 hells, but you're right. My family's been torn apart over a prolonged tangle of the loins, and I almost made an orphan of my boy. How can I thank ye? She stood up and looked out towards the sun. Live, dwarf. When the realm sees fit to take that from you, laugh in the face of it and live. Balance waited until she was out of eyesight of the town before she finally screamed out at the sky. Fuck, I hate humans sometimes! I know not all of them are bad, but give them any modicum of power over everyone else and you think they personally licked their god's asshole. She healed her thumb before finding a tree to sit under and inspected her gear. The whip had a bit of slime on it from crossing paths with the Vanderhop's tongue, but her sword was still covered in the thing's blood. She hadn't retrieved her thrown dagger in the heat of the moment, so she would need a new one of those at some point. She sighed and pulled her gear back together. It'll be easier to clean this with a water source. I'll just rest in this tree for now. She said this more to herself than any being who might be spying on her, as the gods in these lands seem wont to do sometimes, and climbed into the higher branches of the tree before settling in for what she hoped would be a short nap. Are you still running? No? Yes? I don't know. Who would want to remember that? No one, I would think. Mortals don't usually like being on fire. That's sort of why my whole circle of hell is fire, because of how much mortals hate that. Unless they're into that. I've seen some weird shit since becoming a ranger, Fiona. Yes, it is always fun to find the ones that think they enjoy the burn. They moan all the way up until they realize I won't actually stop. That's not funny. I'm literally trying not to think about being set on fire. Oh, am I supposed to feel sorry for you? If we're talking about literally, I am literally always on fire, ruling a realm of fire, which is the only reason we were able to talk like this at all, so excuse me if I don't trip over myself every time I mention someone being on fire around you. Okay. Who's the touchy one now? Fuck you, Velrisa. It's Balance now, Fiona. Oh, what brought that on? I figured if I started going by Balance as a virtue name, it would help me stay balanced while I'm being a hunter, slayer, ranger, whatever. Oh, so that you don't fall headlong into your infernal heritage, is that it? What would be so wrong with that? It could be fun. Of course you would find it fun. There's people that consider you the queen of succubi, you know. I do like a good sucking from time to time. Wow, just wow. I seem to recall you felt the same once upon a time. You could charm a human out of their pants faster than a bard could tune some sort of string instrument. I'll have to get my hands on a bard soon. They make such wonderful music before and after they start to burn. Yeah, well, maybe if I had stopped doing all that sooner, I wouldn't have got strung up as a witch and burned at the stake for 4 hours. Yes, I know. I may never understand why those humans thought that would work on a tiefling. Well, now they know tieflings burn like marshmallows. Have you forgotten? Forgotten what? That town is gone, Balance. You destroyed the entire thing after I helped you escape the pyre. What? No, I remember leaving the town after I gave you a boost of power to get off of the stake. You set the entire place on fire. Everyone there is dead. Ergo, no one knows that tieflings burn like marshmallows. Secret safe. No, that can't be. And she woke, as if from a nightmare but unable to sweat. She hadn't been for years, not since the incident. But this time she remembered everything. It wasn't a nightmare, it was memories and a conversation. Balance looked down at her hands, shaking. Was it fear? Rage? Anguish? She had never thought about how she escaped that town. All she remembered was falling from the stake and leaving it all behind her, but what had the name been? Fiona, dear. She jolted and almost fell out of the tree. Fiona? Why can I remember now? It has been years since you slept long enough for me to get through to you about it. So what? I am a paladin or something? Are my powers coming from you? Balance could practically feel the eye roll from there. Yes, of course, you went through years of rigorous training to learn all of your arts and techniques because it is all coming from me. You should know we don't do that down here. At best, I may help you in another life or death situation if I'm bored and not elbow deep in a confused priest of my cult. So what are you then, my conscience or something? Balance flinched as laughter rang out in her head. No. Your powers you learned didn't come from me, but the spells you used on those humans before they tried to kill you? That was me. Why? Why would you have been paying me any attention at all? Your parents truly taught you nothing. I was paying no attention to you at all, child. I am simply the Archdevil where your family line originates. You were like me in many ways, but you suppressed most of them out of some misguided fear of being a monster. You already are a monster, Velrisa. How? Now do as you told that dwarf and live with it. Valence winced at the use of her real name. No one other than her parents, and now Fierna, knew it, and she hadn't seen them since she finished healing from the burns. She looked down at her hands. They, like most of her body, appeared at first glance to be purple skin, maybe black from a distance, but up close she could see her original magenta showing through the cracks that she very, very incredibly slowly healed. But now she wondered if this was from her harrowing experience or her escape from it. She hopped out of the tree. Fiona was right about a few things. She was a monster. She acted high and mighty and virtuous to the faces of those she tried to help, but she was still the angry young woman that the wife of a horny bartender had dragged by the hair to the center of that village. One more thing before my next appointment. You've got some hard times ahead. Harder than now? Balance asked out loud, only to Fiona instead of whatever random nosy deity might be hanging around. Oh, much. I can't give much help on it, as no one around here knows what it is, but I figured I'd warn you. Toodles, try not to die a horrible death until I get back. I could go for some marshmallows. I shouldn't be surprised I'm descended from a group of dumbasses and a bitch. And she headed off in the direction of the sun, hoping that whatever hard times were ahead would at least be easier than what she had left behind. Okay, so that was me trying to get a feel for that character. There's only one more thing, and then you guys won't have to suffer through my writing anymore, I promise. Unless you want to, but then there has to be something that exists first. This one is also balanced, but it's written from her point of view as her telling something that happened to her before, instead of it being written as something that was happening as it was happening. And she's telling it after the first thing happened. So she knows about her past now, but not when she was telling the story. The day that over the weekend I decided to have her god be Sif, because I thought it would be interesting to have her have a chaotic good god for a chaotic neutral tiefling who has a lawful evil archdevil as a bloodline inferno, whatever the hell. Anyway, the day that I met Lady Sif came about sometime after the incident at Gormsey. At the time, I still had amnesia about my escape, and had taken about a month at my family home to heal from the burns. The pain may tickle, but the skin still peels. Great swaths of my magenta skin are black and cracked, and I don't know if those parts will ever actually heal, but I digress. The day that I met Lady Sif, I was traveling the lands near our home, not sure what I wanted from my life from this point. My parents were either rich merchants or much more devoted to Tiamat than they were willing to tell me to my face, but either way, I had been a well-off, basically spoiled brat. I flirted whenever I felt like it, and maybe even followed up on the arousal I caused in men. But after what happened to me at Gormsey, I decided to leave that business behind. But I didn't have any life skills. I'd only just learned that my wiles were magic, and I didn't want to rely on that. It was in these distressed thoughts that I happened upon a ruined building in the woods. Most people know that Lady Sif and Lord Thor live in the mountains. Of course, I know that now as well, but back then, I was a remarkably naive young woman who had been raised to worship a large evil five-headed dragon. You will understand if not many other religious options had been taught to me. In any case, head in the clouds, I had wandered into the woods and the mountains and literally bumped into a ruined church. Or it could have been a fort. Whatever it was made of stone and unpleasant to collide with. As I landed flat on my butt, swearing like a sailor, out came a great bearded man waving a hammer around, demanding to know who had offended the earthly dwelling of the great and mighty Thor. I looked up at him, holding a bloody nose. The great and mighty what? Why are you living in a wrecked old hunk of church in the damn woods, old man? To see his face, you'd think someone had splashed him with boiling water. Gah! An infernal creature I'd have known. Well, with a strike of my hammer, I'll be sure to cleanse the realm of at least one of you. By all rights, I should have been obliterated all over the freshly marked trees then and there, were it not for a feminine hand slapping the man along the back of his shoulder as she walked around him. Come now, you can't go around destroying tieflings just because they bumped into our wall, love. Some of my best warriors have been tieflings. The man mumbled about there having just been one that he knew of. The woman, meanwhile, approached me and knelt down. I scooted back. If she had just slapped someone prepared to tenderize me off of this plane, how strong was she? You retreat rather than thank me. Tell me, child, do you come from the village below, southeastern from here? I nodded, but frowned around my bloodied hand. Yes, but I'm not a child. I'm nearly 30. She laughed, not a chuckle or a giggle or any other such noise ascribed to the dainty, but a full-throated guffaw I'd expect from the sulking beast of a man behind her. Oh, my apologies, Lady Tiefling. To one such as ourselves, my husband and I, most creatures of this plane are but children. What shall I call you? A doctor, I think. I can't get the damn blood to stop streaming. Another hearty laugh from the woman, this time the man joining in with an awkward chuckle before catching himself. You'll not find doctors here, fiend, but I'm willing to give it a crack, the man shouted, brandishing his hammer. Dunno about that, you just wanted to kill me and you think I'll believe that thing can stop me from dying from blood loss now? The woman did actually chuckle this time. Thor is rather fond of Mjolnir. He thinks it can do a great many things that it can't, as it can do many things other hammers cannot. Nevertheless, you should come outside so we can do something about this. The wall is much sturdier than your face, to your peril, young one. I stood up to follow them. My name is Clarissa, no family name. My full parents think a great ruddy dragon is going to provide that someday, as if they care. Oh, Thor spoke up as he turned to walk. And what great ruddy dragon might that be? Bahamut? Nah, that one would probably at least consider it. For whatever reason, my family up to this point have been following Tiamat. Both of them froze and stared hard at me. And do you? The lady started, but I raised a hand and scoffed. Hardly. If half the things I've read of her on my own time are true, I've got no reason to think she's ever given a damn about my whole line. So you've read of Tiamat and Bahamut, and yet you don't know us? Should I? The town didn't have books on people living in the mountains and ruined churches. They looked at the looks at each other, said nothing and everything in the rearranging of their brows, and continued into the house. I feel like they're supposed to say looked at each other. So nobody's been calling me on my typos. Not even Microsoft, because it's still a word. Beckoning me to follow. I did and was greeted with a very warm dwelling that had none of the inner holes to match the wrecked exterior. Woo! Definitely some sort of magic happening here, I guess, but I'm stumped as to the two of you and don't really want to keep being rude if you're about to save what's left of my blood. The woman closed the door behind me and passed a hand across my face, and that was all it took, both to stop the flow of blood and start the flow of information. There was a convenient chair behind me as I stumbled back into it. You're both? Aye, we're gods! Thor thumped his chest with Mjolnir as he did this. God or not, I can't imagine that being a pleasant feeling to this day. So, why are you living in the woods just off the bounds of my village? Lady Sif flicked her hand dismissively. There wasn't any sort of motive. We were here before your village. Had to get away from the family and never really got around to going back. Loki doesn't like these trees, so he never came more than the day he found us. Loki, Thor, Sif, a village of Tiamat devotees living with living Norse gods nearby. Wait, so if you all are real enough to just have a little magic cabin, does that mean? Thor nodded. Aye. Somewhere on this continent, Tiamat and Bahamut both can be spoken to in the flesh. Wouldn't recommend it. Their bickering will put you down long before their claws and breath. He laughed as if this casual confirmation of my parents' god was the greatest joke of the evening. Was I to be struck down for not caring for the great beast? Sif shook her head. Tiamat couldn't care less if you believe in her or not. None of you are dragons or dragonborn, and thus your worship is useless. She does know you're here discussing her, but we all stay away from each other. She again waved her hand dismissively. What has brought you to these woods, Felrisa? I told Thor and Sif about what had happened to me that I could remember. Thinking back, I think they probably knew already, and even what I didn't remember, but they both listened quietly as I told them of myself and how I had ended up in these woods. When I finished, they again shared a silent brow conversation. Felrisa, there is great turmoil within your heart. If it goes... I'm supposed to say it goes deeper than your occupation. You need help to balance this turmoil. I offer you that help. I offer you to train under me. I could hardly believe it. Train under a god. Train? But what would... I mean, I greatly appreciate the offer, but I don't think I have any useful skills. She smiled so warmly that my heart ached briefly at such a gesture towards one such as myself. Clarissa, my young friend, I would train you in the ways of the longsword. It should be far easier to attend to your inner turmoil when we complete this training. But how is skill with a sword going to heal my heart? Doctors could barely soothe my skin. Lady Sif's smile dropped and she advanced on me, sword at my throat before I even knew she had drawn one. Thor said nothing, simply watched. My dear, do not question my offering. Simply accept it, and know that when your training is at an end, you will know your path, and be glad to have stepped upon it here, in this ruined church. He flipped the sword around so that the hilt was facing me, and I accepted it. We trained for what felt like years. Thor said time doesn't matter in their home, and while Sif said to only focus on the training, not the length of it. When I left their house, it was just nightfall, and my head was buzzing with the new techniques, as were my muscles. I slept like a rock and returned early the next day, eager to continue. This continued for months, and I grew leaner, harder. New scars joined the burns as Sif drilled me daily, until, eventually, enough! You've done well these past months, my child. I withheld my gasp of breath as I saluted her at attention. Now, none of that. Today is, your graduation ceremony. Your longsword training is at an end. I was pleased to hear this, but a bit sad at the message beneath the congratulations. Yes, you've the right of it, Valrisa. Once you leave here, we won't meet face to face again. Are you going to be leaving? I was, at the time, confused. They lived right by my town. How couldn't I come to see them? No, you will be leaving. You already know your path. You've just been avoiding looking directly at that corner of your mind out of fear. She was right, of course. Gentle, fierce Lady Sif, of course she knew my mind. I want to become a monster slayer. Thor turned around from the fireplace where he had been cooking something. Oh, I? And what made you decide on that? I sighed, thought about how best to phrase it. I looked around the strange magic knot church I had been coming to every day for 7 months. It was Spartan compared to even my own home. Just a chair for each of them by the fireplace, a bed that they shared. The fireplace itself was practically their entire kitchen, but I'd never really seen them eat. Spartan compared to my home, but more of a home to me than there this past half a year. I want to help people, I think. What I went through last year was awful. Horrendously painful, an outrageously cruel reaction to something as simple as being a flirt. As unavoidable as what I was born as. This world is full of monsters, and while some of them are men, there are a great many more that endanger men, women, children. I don't want anyone to go through my pain if my training can help them, so I want to become a monster slayer. Thor clapped 4 times at my answer, but Sif frowned at me, and I could only frown back. She truly knew my heart better than I at times. Well, Risa, the path you walk is treacherous. I believe that you want to help others, and your reasoning is certainly just, but your wounds have left shadows on your heart, and I hope that those shadows don't grow so long as you strike false in the darkness. Or so long that you strike false in the darkness. Wrapped in prettiness as her words were, the meaning was clear enough. I was towing a line by letting my anger out in this fashion, and I was definitely angry. Lady Sif, I trailed off, and she reached out and put her hand on my head, for she had now chosen to be taller than me. You can admit it. If not to me, then to yourself through me. I want to help people. I do, but I think I hate them too. I hate them all for what happened to me, but I also know I can't rightly live like that. I can't raise a sword to the whole of humanity because one village thought to burn me at the stake for magical flirting, but it's hard. I've gone through such pain, and yet, is this right? Should I do this thing? At the time, I was truly torn. I still am in some ways. There have certainly been times when I wish to plunge my sword through a man up to the hilt for his crimes that no one could judge him on properly. The dwarf cohorting with Banderhouse for useless love comes to mind. How I wish to cut him down where he stood. That you recognize this in yourself is all the more reason your path is correct, Valrisa. Valrisa. My birth name scorched with my body, darkened with my heart. Call me Balance from now on, Lady Sif. She raised an eyebrow at me. Oh, and what has brought on this decision? My name has as much weight on it as my heart and soul. I think I need to leave it behind for a while, as I try to find balance within myself, and so I shall take that on as my chosen name, Balance, to help me find it. I laughed. Maybe if enough people say it, it will be willed into being. I continued laughing so that I almost missed Sif hugging me. The laughter caught in my throat was forced out as sobs as I hugged her back. Lady Sif, is hugging gods allowed? She patted the back of my head, my shoulders, rested her head on mine. Today it is. Tomorrow and from then on we shall only meet in prayer, but today, hugging gods is allowed. I don't know how long the hug lasted. I do know it was ended by Thor clearing his throat. Wife, if you're done crushing this woman, or if you're quite done crushing the woman, wasn't there something else you wanted to do before she leaves? The hug broke quickly and I laughed awkwardly. Lady Civ held out the sword I had been training with horizontally and dragged her finger along the blade, turning the iron silver. Now, I've basically just coated this sword in silver for you. You can have it done at any blacksmith as long as you've got the silver to melt and the silver to pay, but I figured, as a graduation gift, it was my idea, Thor shouted from his chair. As a graduation gift, having your first longsword come directly from me couldn't be too bad, right? I opened my mouth to thank her, but she waved her hand dismissively as she had done so long ago when we met. None of that? Go now. You have much more training ahead of you than what I've provided if you wish to become a true monster slayer. The darkness in your heart is dangerous, but when it speaks to you, don't run from it. When it speaks to me? You will know. Farewell, Balance. She put a finger to her forehead. You know where to find me. Okay, so, that's all the things I wrote. Well, that's not all the things I wrote. There's one of them that I never finished because I don't think I can now, but, yeah, so. Like I said, the entire reason this video exists is because my dad has been saying for the longest time that I should do something I made myself on my channel, and my drawing is not very good. I can't make video games. I probably never will be able to do that. But I can write again, so there's some of that. I have no idea what I'm going to call this video. I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again. That really comes down to if any of you want me to ever do this again, but that being said, this has been Anachi Sasuke. If you liked it, a like and a subscribe will be groovy. If you didn't, you don't need to do either one of those things. If you want to click the bell, you can do that as well so that you're notified of future uploads. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Later.